Well, hello, creatives, community, and kind folks. Welcome to RPG with DBJ, and welcome to this Future Friday. Thank you very much for joining me. Of course, I'm your host, DBJ, and you can't forget all the brilliant and creative and kind folks in the community who make this channel possible. Thank you for being here. Now, we're just going through a series of, in short, excellent premise, terrible execution, movies and series. I thought I silenced my. That is the one thing you should always do: is silence your phone. Means I'm not a professional. All right. The Today on this Future Friday, I thought we'd go take a look at the movie Surrogates. Now, of course, I know all of you out there have a. Ooh, ooh. It hasn't gone. Okay. Let's make sure this says. Apparently, I'm streaming on Twitch, but I am not streaming on YouTube. And you're right, it is set to private. All right. Let's see if this will allow me to, or if it will do this. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Please, guys, let me know if I am broadcasting out there on YouTube. Should be on Twitch. Twitch is fine. Okay. YouTube should be active right now. But just let me know. Hopefully it will be. Yay! Thank you. All right. Maybe a phone being on in the background isn't the worst thing alive. It's alive. It's alive. Which slight segue into what we're going to talk about. All right. So there was the old graphic novel. About surrogates, which was made into a movie. And of course, it is speculative fiction. Of course, we're talking, this is Future Friday. We're going to talk about science fiction and a little bit of fantasy. And the concept of surrogates, like I said, it was great premise, terrible execution. Is, well, let's go into their premise first, and let's break this apart a little bit. And this falls into this category of transhumanism and cortical stacks. Of course, I'm wearing my altered carbon shirt and such. It slightly, and they do some world building in this movie, because I've never read the actual graphic novel it was based on, but they do some world building, and it has some they bring across, whether they meant to do this or not, some interesting concepts that take the whole like cortical stack and piloting or driving an artificial being. So Surrogates is a 2009 American science fiction film based on a 2005 to 6 comic book series, The Surrogates. And it stars a bunch of people, directed by Jonathan Mostow. It stars Bruce Willis as Tom Greer, an FBI agent who ventures out into the real world to investigate the murder of surrogates, or humanoid remote-controlled robots. I believe one of the taglines was, "This is the first murder in 15 years." And that's because really your surrogate can be destroyed, but they're never really killed. You're resting inside of like a pod that operates them remotely. It also stars Radha Mitchell, Rosamund Pike, Boris Kodjoe, Ving Rhames, and James Cromwell. The film's main concept centers on the mysterious murder of a college student linked to the man who helped create a high-tech surrogate phenomenon that allows people to purchase remote-controlled humanoid robots through which they interact with society. These fit, attractive, remotely controlled robots ultimately assume their life roles, enabling people to experience life vicariously from the comfort and safety of their own homes. Surrogates was released in September 25, 2009. In the United States and Canada, it received mixed reviews from critics and grossed over $122 million. Yeah, in the near future, widespread use of remotely controlled androids called surrogates enables everyone to live in idealized forms from the safety of their homes. Compared to the surrogates, the human operators are depicted as slovenly and homebound. And goes on because we'll talk about some of the other details about that. All right, so here we go. There we go. Yep, I see all the comments, both Twitch, YouTube, and Discord. Yep. So the the main conceit here, unlike, and this isn't really a norm thing. Unlike Altered Carbon, the role playing game Eclipse Phase, unlike Dollhouse, in which a human brain is mind wiped to upload into an artificial being, the people are in the privacy of their own homes, put themselves into a pod, and with an extremely high level of broadcast and fidelity, they're all of their senses and their ability to operate the surrogates is beamed into some kind of way into these humanoid robots. Now, when they say humanoid robots, these are they are portrayed by human beings that are they're the ugly models, right? They are fit, attractive, perfect smile on their face, the whole nine yards. They live vicariously through these humanoid robots that in all senses of the word, until you do like a really intense investigation, they look human. Now, there's something about them, the surrogates, their inability to blink, certain types, sometimes they have bodily functions that are not noticeably human. Like, for example, you will see me rotate a little bit back and forth in my chair. Sometimes I'll stutter. I have vocal mannerisms that, while not very professional in a broadcast sense, human beings do all the time, like using words you know what I'm saying? Different vocal intonations that show that I'm trying to think through something. Whereas in the surrogates, when the human has to take a break, the surrogate just stops what they're doing. You know, they could pour a hot cup of coffee, and in the middle of pouring the hot cup of coffee, they can stop and go get a Pop Tart or something, which I happen to have over here to the side of me. The surrogate just stops and lets maybe the hot coffee's pouring over their hand and they don't even notice it. Um, so over time, it's become very public. And what I like about surrogates is that it puts it separates the protagonist and antagonist with another level of complication. So let's say the player characters arrive here. Now, mind you, in a lot of speculative fiction, the whatever the premise is takes over the world, right? Whether it is teleportation or robots or mind uploading or something like that. It becomes the killer app that takes over everything. I think this premise works better very much in the world of Altered Carbon or Eclipse Phase, where hell, even if you wanted to throw this into the Expanse as well, where there's a habitat, a local, private, enclosed, bounded region where this is taking place. Maybe there's a space habitat or another planet or a starship or a cycler hollowed out asteroid or something like that, O'Neill cylinder or something, some kind of planetary surface or what have you. Maybe it's a domed a domed impact crater on the moon or Mars or something, or hell, maybe even so far as out to on Pluto or whatever. And this way, this is the kind of technology that may not infiltrate the rest of the world, but it's still useful. And what I like about the concept is that, again, when the player characters arrive, assuming that they're going to use surrogates, that their antagonists, you both have to figure out how to hunt down and stop their surrogate and then figure out where the antagonist is in the safety of their own home. And one conceit that they show in the movie, and I'm sure this conceit is made for the viewer, because those of us, we creators and community and kind folks out there in the tabletop RPG community, the first thing we think about when it comes to using surrogates is like, how the hell can I modify my artificial robot, right? Like, you could theoretically make it look like anything you could create in the physical world. Like, I could imagine with so many Marvel and DC movies that someone's like, I want to play Iron Man, and walk around with their surrogate looking exactly like Iron Man or War Machine or Vision, and because the surrogates have artificial skin, they can look like any human or humanoid. So anything from Spider-Man to the Hulk would look cool. Some of your favorite sci-fi characters, things like that. Maybe buying the license to look like or look as close to like a famous individual, like a Marilyn Monroe or a James Dean or something like that. But in the conceit of surrogates, every surrogate looks like the person that they are representing, uh, um, albeit an idealized version of them. Attractive, tall, athletic. Because the robots are surrogates, they are exceptionally strong, fast, durable, don't feel pain or don't feel very much discomfort, etc. And possibility of even having like robot or cybernetic implants that give them additional vision or hearing or something like that. There's a little hint of that as well. And that would put the protagonists, the PCs, if they are in their biological bodies, that puts them at a disadvantage against the majority of the population that are running around in their surrogates. Now, why I say there's a conceit is because in within the world building, there are communities of meat bags, right, Rickard? There are communities of meat bags that refuse to use the surrogate system, and they live. It's pseudo post-apocalyptic, right? They're living in these trash heaps, literally away from humanity, with like dirty clothes and kit bashed weapons and things, because they don't want to live under that kind of regime. And there are like political protests and people walking around like, we want to shut down the surrogate system and the company's wrong and they're destroying our society. But of course, they don't have the speed and functionality and beauty that the surrogates have. As a matter of fact, there are even stores that sell surrogates that are like off the shelf surrogates. And I believe you could probably order them to look, you can order one off the shelf and then later, either at the time you buy it, like a car or something, or have the surrogate modified to look like you, skin tone, perfect hair, excellent voice, upright and, a couple of inches taller than you really are. Also, something else that happens within the conceit of the movie, and listen, I'm not telling you to go out and see it. Like I said, excellent premise, terrible execution, is that one of the leaders, Ving Rhames, who plays one of the leaders, long dreadlocks and whatnot, big black dude that's like, yeah, he's head of the rebellion against the surrogates, is actually piloted by another gentleman. What's the actor's name? Mm, 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 mm. Is it James Cromwell? I believe might be the actor. Um, and like an older, maybe 20 to 30 year older version, maybe a 20-year older version of Ving Rhames, who's a white dude who actually created the surrogate program in the first place. And you come to find out that he's got a couple of other surrogates that he can pilot. And so why I said it was, yeah, James Cromwell, excellent actor, by the way. Just didn't remember his name, but when you see the actor, you're like, oh yeah, that's right. Not as good, but um, he falls into the category of Dance. Is it James Dance? Anyway, he falls into that older, seasoned category of actor that I really like. Um, anyway, a journeyman actor that's in everything. always brings his A game. And so this person, of course, this person is in a wheelchair. He's an older white guy. He's got a couple of other surrogates he can pilot. And so for the lay person, you see that they're like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't know your surrogate can not look like you and be a different race, different age, different gender. So then that brings up the idea that, in the police force, many of the police officers operating, detectives and whatnot, operating their surrogates, of course, now there's a character in it who becomes, who's assaulted, and then their surrogate is taken over. So now you don't know whether this person's a good guy or bad guy. You find out that she's the bad guy because it's being operated by the antagonist in the movie, and so on and so forth. And they do a couple of things. Like, for example, one of the things, it's very subtle in the movie, but I really liked it, and I wish they took it a little further, was that our main character, Bruce, played by Bruce Willis, and he ends up leaving home, and he's suffering from a bit of agoraphobia, I believe, a fear of being outside because so many people have been living in these pods. Yeah, and I cannot agree with you more there, Rickard. Yeah, the ending is just very lackluster. Yeah, this concept did not need to be tied up with a bow, and everyone wakes up and leaves their surrogates behind because we shut it down, and everyone comes out into the sunlight. It's like, yeah, like I said, you don't need to see it. Just read the cliff notes in on Wikipedia. You're pretty much done. Um, but again, the idea that the main protagonist, now he can't use a surrogate, he's got to go out there into the real world. He's talking with his wife, and when he goes to see her at, because she's working at like a hairdresser's for surrogates, which is weird in and of itself, because it's like dressing androids and getting them to look good. But anyway, he's having a conversation with her, and she's just not having it. And in the middle of the conversation, like, she's got the robotized eyes. She's all prim and proper. She looks good, and then you see her head just drop to the side. Her eyes go dead because she just turns off the surrogate. And I was just like, ooh, ow, that's like it's almost like Talk to the Hand, but in a mechanical kind of way. And I really like that, and I thought they could have done a little bit more with that, since the idea of using the surrogates is that you really don't have to deal with your own problems. That's one of the overriding concepts, is that people are using the surrogates to hide in the privacy of their own homes, to live their lives vicariously, and they don't need to deal with the real world, right? Because they're dealing with the world through a filter of these surrogates. And I thought that was kind of a cool thing. It's very subtle. It was just an aside in the movie, but I really like the fact that he's trying to have a deep conversation with her, and she's just like at work, like, I'm not having this conversation with you. you know. Rickard says, I mean, let's face it, Surrogate would be back up and running in a week or two. Yeah, a few months if the companies that make them are especially bad at backing up their code base. You got that right. There's no way these people would be like, oh, the whole world's operating surrogates, and we're all just gonna give it all up in an instant. Um, the other thing too was, and like I said, this was a conceit from lay people who are interested in this kind of thing, that the first thing people would do with the surrogates would be to modify them. Now, I understand, and something not mentioned in the movie might be an extremely strong case of body dysmorphia. So, for example, maybe you can't, or it's very difficult to operate a surrogate that does not have your physical presence as close to what you can imagine, or at least your idealized version you can imagine, as possible. Now, that's a thing that's in Eclipse Phase and a bit in Altered Carbon, where if you operate a body that is not your same gender, height, color, age, you have some difficulty. But if you're operating a mechanical body that has like 8 limbs and looks like a spider or a crab or a snake, or a micro swarm of micro robots or something like that. Sometimes you might have an extremely difficult time operating those systems, fitting in, maybe even suffering some like psychological or even psychic backlash or something. And so that might be a possibility where the player characters might want a combat droid. It's just very difficult to operate one, either through operating through a certain amount of time, or there's too much of a filter, or the the ability for a human being to operate something with multiple arms or snake-like body might be very difficult, skill-wise, numerically wise, or the growing chances every hour that you might suffer some kind of psychic harm or psychological ability, like some kind of a misstep or something. Yeah, like operate or an octopus, or it might be the opposite, right? We know in all, excuse me, we know in the eclipse phase, you can play uh, an uplifted octopus who might have a hard time operating a human being. The other way around. Like trying to operate a real octopus is difficult, and they get around that. Side note: in the game, they kind of get around the idea of operating multiple limbs by stating that you can only operate the limbs you have by the ones that you can see, i.e., just because you have 8 limbs doesn't mean you have 8 attacks. It just means you can use 2 limbs to do something, and then you might be able to use 2 more limbs like another human being. Rickard brings up Surrogate meets Cthulhu, Eldritch Surrogate. Yeah, there's a fantasy element to this. I think that might be possible as well. Rickard goes on to say they could have capped it off with Willis that as well, uh, understanding that as well, like a simple let them live their own lives for a few moments. Maybe they'll rediscover some of the things we lost along the way. Yeah, I think they could have ended that movie with a like undiscovered country kind of thing, right? Like some people wake up, the world's thrown in a bit of chaos. Others are like maybe they start to see the light of the rebellion group that's like against it. Where they could have left it open. Like maybe people wake up, maybe they don't. Um, I wouldn't have minded if there was a question mark at the end because I think that could have left more time for them to deal with this idea of surrogates. Like for example, another world building thing they did was uh, the main character Bruce Willis's wife is having a party with friends. They're all in their surrogates, so they all look good and they're dressed fine, and they're using something that looks like a taser. It's like a taser, but they're tasing themselves, but it feels like a drug, right? It's like drug addict, but it's like this electrical taser thing they're zapping themselves, their bodies with, and it's almost you get the idea that the people that are in the surrogates, there is a bit of a filter that they don't feel life in the same way everyone else does. That like the colors are muted, the sensory input is a little bit muted. Maybe eating ice cream or watching a sunset or you know um, having a really intense bowel movement or so, like all that stuff is probably gone in a way. So I don't know. Dead Man brings up Cthulhu Tech. Yeah, Battle Tech meets Call of Cthulhu. Yeah, Cthulhu Tech, isn't that just Warhammer 40K with lots of Chaos Marines? Yeah, you know what? Going back to us talking about Gundam and Mecha, maybe, hey, Michael, what's going on there, dude? What's up? Maybe one of the ways to operate the surrogate system might be to pull out one of your Mecha books, like Mecha Hack or one of these other things, and just make the mechas human sized, right? So that the pilots are nowhere nearby; they're just being teleoperated. So, like in the movie Surrogates, when Bruce Willis gets his arm shot off, or when Bruce Willis walks out, in his meatbag form, in his human form, and he's confronting these other surrogates and having like physical confrontations with them, fighting these, smashing them in the head and fighting them like Terminators or robots. You could, find any rules for like constructs or mecha or something like that to separate the I'm not fighting a human, I'm fighting a robot part of it. And like I said, I like the idea of this because the characters could very easily, but PCs, they always want to run and gun. They're always loaded up with their armor and their weapons, and they want to start shooting people down, which is fine because they can destroy as many surrogates as they want. They'll still never confront the real antagonists because they are away in their privacy of their own homes. So now you add an extra layer of the player characters needing to go after, maybe they can trace or triangulate a signal to find out where the protagonists are at. We don't know how many surrogate bodies the protagonist can operate. We don't know how many allies that the antagonists, I apologize, the antagonists may have. We don't know what kind of modified body parts they have. I mean, we don't really see it too much in the movie, but of course, hidden weapons and extra sensors and body armor and things like that in it could be it. Yeah, Mr. Gould, we're talking about the movie Surrogates. Excellent IP, terrible execution movies and television shows, and this happens to be the one for science fiction. Now, I think for fantasy, I think this fits for fantasy as well. I mean, let's go with classic Dungeons and Dragons. We have constructs in the game. Could you imagine from, let's say, a few dozen to a few hundred operated constructs by with a few dozen, you have maybe a select group of individuals like a council of magi and their immediate family and friends, or maybe there's some ancient civilization or something used to operate these constructs, and these people live there in these sarcophagi styled chambers, but they operate the constructs. And of course, again, like living vicariously, right? They become powerful. Yeah, like Mike Gould says, Ultron used the same tactic, right? Yeah, you can't do. In the comic books, I know, in the comic books, it's the nerd rule. No one ever really dies. It's the nerd mantra. But Ultron in the book, they would number Ultron, right? Like if you do a Wikipedia search or a Comicpedia search or whatever of Ultron, it's like Ultron number 8. Here's a storyline for Ultron number 13, because Ultron would come back because Ultron was never really in the robot. He's just operating it from a distance from somewhere. And the typical, like, we've destroyed Ultron, and I will get you back. The Scooby, if it wasn't for you meddling superheroes, I'd have gotten away with it, kind of thing, right? Omen says it's more like a gory version of Power Rangers to me, especially in terms of the taggers talking about 40K. The other thing is that we're especially the way the movie was filmed. It was like filmed like a very low budget television show. But that being the case, they really don't delve into the body horror of it, and a lot of the transhuman theories and such, they don't really delve into the body horror of like the people that are living in these pods. Like they give you the idea that Bruce Willis's wife has been, her hair is ratty and her teeth are dirty, and her body's kind of atrophied a little bit from being in the pod for too long. And they don't really delve into, like, for example, people who have various physical afflictions. Maybe they want or need their robot, their surrogate. You haven't thought about that. Maybe there are specifically dangerous jobs that we want surrogates to have for this purpose. Firemen, police officers, military, working in, fusion and radioactive power plants. Like, do we, deep sea diving and such, do we really want people there, or can we just use surrogates? If you're working for the Red Cross and you're saving people's lives, maybe it's better for you to be in a one location and operate a surrogate from around the world to save people's lives, right? They never dealt or dove into that part of it. And I think the world building, it would have been a cooler idea to look at both sides of like, oh, well, this started out as a great idea. Should we really get rid of it? And I like speculative fiction that way. Mike Gould says, I can see ghosts using possession to use NPCs as the surrogates. Ooh, the struggle is to try and end the ghost without ending too many innocents. And in that sense, whether it is a fantasy mystical ghost, right, where maybe the player characters need the ghost to take over their bodies to accomplish a goal, or the ghosts are the innocents. They are taking over other people's bodies, which, problematic in and of itself. But then on the other hand, maybe to exercise the ghost, and I don't mean lifting weights. I mean to use exorcism on the ghosts. Maybe the ghosts are like, listen, we need you guys to help us solve this thing, and we can't do it without your help. You physical body people, and the PCs are like, ooh, how can we help them do this? Also, maybe there's a ghost on ghost fight, and some of the ghosts are possessing like monsters or undead or things like that. Right, exactly. Michaels also says it sounds like a Shadowrun rigger, using drones to achieve objectives. Exactly, and I'll go into this in a minute. Mufa has a comment, says this is making me think Fallout style vaults, except the only way to get outside is through robotic surrogates. Exactly. Yeah, Omen mentions I don't want to go out looking like me. I'm with you there, dude. I'm like, I want War Machine. I want Black Panther. Like, you don't need to put real skin on my robot. My surrogate. I have something else. But yeah. Ooh, Full Metal State. What's going on there, man? But yeah, I think in a fantasy setting, like you can set up some really interesting complications. So imagine the antagonist, the enemies are coming after the PCs. The PCs are unconscious, stasis in their pods. The enemies are breaking through walls with their guns or claws or something. They're coming after the PCs. The PCs see the enemy about to kill them in the pods, but the PCs are now riding inside of their own surrogates. So now they have to defend their own bodies from dangers that an enemy might be causing, or something else might, like maybe a room is flooding and their body's inside of it, but their surrogate is far more physically capable. Do they use the surrogate to lift up the pod of their own selves onto their own shoulders to get it out of the flooding chamber, or a radiation leak, or a fire, or a building collapse, or maybe on one hand, one group of player characters is trying to use a decoy, a distraction for the enemy, while another group zeroes in on the signals being cast. So yeah, thank you, Deadman. It's like the Avatar program, right? Which this is just a side note for me for like Avatar, which some of you may think was an excellent premise, terrible execution. I wouldn't say terrible execution, maybe derivative storyline, but I always thought the James Cameron um, Avatar program would be better movies rather than going back to the Na'vi and their idyllic world. Like, we don't need more blue people. Why don't we just go other places? The Avatar program was a program where you take human beings and they are downloaded into the brains of, not downloaded, but broadcast in the brains of these biological bodies. Why not just go somewhere else and just tell other stories with other actors and other problems and stuff? I I don't know. That's just me. Yeah, the whatever. Um, anyway, thank you very much there, Full Metal State, who says, long time DBJ, good to see you on, sir. Great content as always. That remains to be seen. Mike Gould says, riffing on the Fallout idea, using the surrogate concept during a zombie apocalypse, but you're remote operating other zombies to rescue others without being destroyed. Remote operating zombies? Ooh, well, yes, although bad guys, we've seen bad guys do that before, right? Where the bad guy is remote operating one or more of their own lackeys, and then the heroes get to like smack the lackey about the face and face and shoulders, and the bad guy's like, "Ha, you think you got me, but you'll never." Blah blah blah. They get to talking, which I think it's kind of a good idea if you want to introduce your big bad without your heroes instantly laying the smackdown on your big bad. Like, maybe they are using a proxy to belittle the heroes so that they can get pissed off and want to open up a can of whoop ass on your big bad later on in your story or something. So yeah. Also, going away from fantasy into technology, we do have the idea of like the ghost in the machine. There could be AI or human beings that were downloaded into machines that are now taking possession of people with, say, cortical stacks or some other mechanism, and they could both be pro and antagonists. Like, hey, someone did a destructive download on our bodies. We don't have our bodies, but our minds are still here, and we want to get the hell out of here. So the only way they've done it or been trying to do it is take over other people or other mechanisms or other machines to rescue themselves, or maybe even scientists released something dangerous. The scientists are uploaded into machines. They need to stop it before all human beings are destructively downloaded or uploaded or something. So now the scientists are doing destructive acts or illegal acts to try to save the world, and the PCs don't understand it. It could be this could be our first contact with an alien species, much like human beings using. We sent out the Perseverance rover, our latest rover on Mars, along with United Arab Emirates and China sending, drones to Mars. Who says that an alien species wouldn't send their own drones, their own surrogates to Earth that look like humans, but they're really just piloted robots and whatnot? Rickard says, speaking of ghosts, possession, and such, plus surrogate hacking, how about Matrix agents? Anyone? Matrix agents are in a way, a form of like the way they operate, right? Like they're AIs that can jump into other human beings and then possess them, which would be a pretty dangerous enemy if the enemy is essentially ethereal, can astral project or something themselves out of a destroyed body to just go into another another body to have it destroyed. And then we have our social, ethical thing, right? Innocent human being taken possessed by a ghost or machine or something like that. Is it okay to kill that innocent person? And then will the innocent person's brain come back, or are they violently destroyed, a la a squiddy riding on the back of the neck of a human being or something of that nature, right? Like what does it say? When you look into the abyss, the abyss looks right back into your soul or back into you. Is the person's soul destroyed and then something evil is dominating them, like a demon possessing their body and just, munches on their soul as a snack? Or are they shunted off and just riding in the body and they don't have any control over it? Either story works really well, and I think it makes it pretty compelling. And in human beings, for example, like you could run a story where in science fiction where the main characters are in a starship in orbit, but they're beaming down themselves into surrogates that are on, let's say, Europa or Titan or an alien planet with an acidic. What is it? Titan has absolutely. It's extremely cold, methane and ethane, pools of water in oceans, that kind of thing. Well, you don't want to send a biological body, and you may not even want to send humans in suits, but sending down robots might be pretty cool. And the PCs can't die, but getting destroyed might not be the good thing, because hey, I've got the information in my hand. Boom, arm gets shot off. Damn it fell into a pool of acid. Gonna have to get into another surrogate and go ahead and find that robot arm that got shot off of my last surrogate or whatever. Like Mike Gould is saying, like riffing on the cyberpunk idea, being the mind of a hacker with a dead body but a living mind, you possess robots, machines, appliances, and building systems looking for a way out. Essentially, a viral AI. Yeah, and then there comes the question: are you human or are you artificial? May not be able to answer that question, but that might be the problem, right? You're the hacker who doesn't have a human body anymore. Someone finds your dead body plugged up to a machine, and then that might even start the process of discovery. Like the PCs are like, ooh, does that mean one or more of us are going to have to actually plug ourselves into this system? And can we come back to our bodies? Is it based on a time period? Is it based on breaking through a certain firewall? Is it confronting, I don't know what you would call like internet debris that's out there? Do you get caught in a honeypot and see something that you can't come back from it? That'd be kind of cool. All that's kind of cool. Rickard brings up The Fallen. Wow, that reminds me of another movie that fits this series theme, though not worthy of a standalone talk. Fallen with Denzel Washington. If you have to, this is a modern day take, so not far future, not ancient, but this is a modern day take of a investigator who gets pulled into investigating what is basically a demon. Hey, Cameron F joins us, and Denzel Washington and John Goodman is in this movie as well. And there's a demon, or I guess you could say a fallen angel, and they keep doing the song. Time is on my side. Yes, it is. And the demon has the ability to instantly jump from one person to another through physical contact, and somewhat physical contact. And there's a scene where Denzel Washington is standing on a sidewalk and there's people passing him by. And the demon keeps jumping from person to person as each person passes by the other person, and they rub shoulders or hand touches or whatever. And I was just like, ooh, that's scary. And the way it was played is really good. You could probably find a clip of that on YouTube. I'll probably get banned if I try to look that up. But yeah, there's a really cool scene where that happens, and it's pretty nasty how the movie ends. It ends like the movie Seven in a way. And I agree it may not be worthy of a standalone talk, but it does fit into this concept of, the evil person, entity, the antagonist is in doesn't have a corporal body, but can find a corporal body. And like I said, this fits perfectly both with high tech, AI systems, a hacker, or maybe there was a group of people who are like Heaven's Gate. We are going to ascend to a different level of understanding, and they just become these disembodied people. Maybe a space habitat is being infiltrated or has been infiltrated by these individuals, one or more individuals, or AI systems that are starting to affect what's happening on the habitat, and they need to be exorcised out of the system, or maybe they're trying to escape from the system, or we can go with the typical cyberpunk. Evil corporation uses human beings as guinea pigs, accidentally creates something, tries to cover up with a nuke, like corporations do. That is true, Rickard. Rickard's like, how did I know you would know the movie, DPJ? Yeah, how would I? Well, I, I'm a Philly kid, and that movie was filmed in Philadelphia. There's a couple of scenes where they're in absolutely iconic locations in Philadelphia. So that's one reason why I would see that movie. That's why I am a M. Night Shyamalan fan, reluctant fan. That is reluctant. Stop it. Reluctant. Mike Gould says, combine The Thing with a high-tech concept where it's not cellular replication creating a hive mind, it's nanites transforming an intelligence. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. The Thing. Ooh. Now, I love the body horror in the John Carpenter's The Thing, because The Thing is actually a remake of a previous movie. So when people say they don't like remakes, the John Carpenter thing is actually better. Now, there was a reboot of a prequel of The Thing, and I don't think it had the same impact because it was done with CGI. The practical effects in The Thing are so much better, especially the chest pump, the chest to get the heart pumping again. The character takes the paddles, rubs them together, gets ready to put it on the heart, and then the chest opens up into these teeth, and his hands fall into the chest, and the thing. clamps down at his arms and rips them off. It's like, oh my god! Or the head starts to separate and falls off the table upside down and grows legs and like eyes off of it. Oh my god! M. Shamalama. M. Night Shamalama Lama Lama. Yeah. Thank you, Dead Man. The defibrillator. Thank you so much. Yeah, that's me being stumbling around being a broadcaster. I do that a lot. Michaels is just a spare gnome jumping from pocket to pocket. That's what happens when you don't take care of your tools. Where's my spare gnome? It's around here somewhere. Damn it, it got away. All right, gnome, get out of that person's body. Gnome's like, no, I'm not leaving. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for just being part of the show. Yeah, Surrogates, not the best movie, but I think it has a really great concept to it. I think the concept of it, of like people being in the bodies, I think it sets up a great, it sets up its own obstacle course to like navigate your way through the world, where on one hand player characters can beat ass on as many surrogate bodies as they like, whether it's in a fantasy realm or alien or high tech, and then at the same time they have to maybe navigate their way to find where the real antagonists are at, especially if those antagonists are on the move. Now in the movie they were stationary, but these things might be on the move, so maybe going after a vehicle of some sort, or like in the Fallout, maybe they're stuck in vaults, or the PCs are stuck in vaults because it's dangerous outside as well. So I think it really fills a lot of these concepts. But anyway, guys, thank you very much. There may be shows on Saturdays and Sundays as well, just me talking generally about different subjects and things like that. But anyway, thank you very much for joining on in here. I really appreciate it, guys. Yeah, Rickard's like, so you have a setting where you can transfer your psyche between surrogates, and you're tasked with escorting a dangerous ghost. That is thought to be trapped in a specific host, but there's no way of really knowing. Yeah, with surrogates, see, you don't really know who's who, so that's awesome. Guys, thank you very much. Please like, share, subscribe, tune in to the channel, spread knowledge, all that good stuff right now. Have a great one. See you later. Have a great weekend. Guys, thank you for watching.